Now, I've said before now, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. The same applies to my intestines. You know, people may make suggestions off the back of them, but again, that holds true. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And if people call my parents names, well, what effectively are they doing? They're calling them names, sort of thing. Now, I looked at this text called Gay Bar. Now, obviously, it's a stunt. It's a piece of kidology, and to deal with that, again, going back to when Wayne Good started trying to, piss me off, get on my nerves, and he did that. Turns out he couldn't do it as effectively as me. And then it leads to the sort of stuff like, for example, the propaganda around minis, Austin Minis. Now, when I say that this is the company that designed the Austin Metro, one of the shittest cars you could imagine being produced, I think that's significant. That's more significant than many people may be able to think in the states they can get into. That is significant. Let's cover Nigger Nick, right? This Hollywood B movie stunt. That's a sack of shit. Picture the scene. This guy standing there with headphones. That's not how I do things. That's clearly not how I do things. But like I said, all the attempts at depictions of what I do fall flat. The argument is null and void. Again, it will be, there'll be attempts to regenerate it. I'll just knock it off its fucking perch every single time. Now, the amalgam said, "I'll take you all on." That was created by the architects, and the people who got pissed on farts on what are essentially fart cushions, stink bombs, and people calling each other names. They got pissed on it, and then the result is you get this concoction, this amalgam, saying things that I wouldn't say, and then you get things years later like Nigger Nick. This Hollywood B movie stunt that's a total sack of shit, standing there going like this in some big deal attempt to engineer further down the line some big deal dramatic moment. Now, the amalgam said, "I'll take you all on." Now, I've already sort of said that quite a while ago it became clearly evident, that Tesco's management was going to get shit-faced on its own supply, and that's that's a realistic assessment of the situation, and that's what you do. Now, faced with that situation, then it's blatantly obvious that there'll be a multitude of attempts to suggest this, that, and everything. We've had the beginnings of trying to suggest things about Nigger Nick tonight. The origins of that, to try and, again, in the interest of Tesco, Tesco, the architects, and so on and so forth. That ain't going away, and I'll knock it off its perch every single time. So it's clear. I'm not the type of person who's done going like this is some Hollywood, some tacky, remedial, anachronistic, regressive, repressive Hollywood B movie stunt. That nigger, as far as I'm concerned, can fuck off and eat bananas for the rest of his life. He might as well, because that is the level of nous behind stunts like that. Just fuck off to Africa and eat bananas for the rest of your life, mate, for all I care. Which is, a valid comment to make. Now, the thing is, part of knocking Tesco's off its fucking perch, and in turn the architects, is descaling. First descaling, like I said, knock it off its fucking perch. And so you render the attempts at the beginning, I think they called it entry drugs, to take me to some sort of denouement that would, get me involved in all that, in all what would sort of serve the architects in Tesco. That's not how it works. That's not, now to see the text that was produced in the interest of Tesco, and so many of them, these are levels of repression that come from the architects. That's the way it is. That's not my approach. Like I said, the example of Nigger Nick, standing there going like this. I actually think things through. That's a scientific approach. That's the grounded. That's a level-headed approach. And all these concoctions that are tried to be engineered to suggest this, that, and everything about me, to me, fall flat ultimately. I'd argue that Wayne is the all-time Lorenzo Sandoval when you really look at it. This pussy of an individual who threw sticks and stones and couldn't take it when someone said something back to him. That's my argument. Now, Tesco's management will pull out all the stops like it did in 2000 to test that to distraction, and attempt to test it to distraction, or see where it goes. Ultimately, it'll go nowhere. It's like, I do this type of stuff. They brought it to this, and I sort of knew that they were going to get shit-faced. Tesco's management. It's blatantly obvious. Like I said in the text about when I was in one of the nut houses. Well, arguably. I can't. Yeah, I can. Bear with me. we get Tesco's not only wanting its cake but eating it as well. But the important thing is, I think they called it entry drugs, where they'll start all this stuff. I've knocked it off its fucking perch. Yeah. So basically, all this is sort of why I mentioned Alex Ferguson earlier. That is the type of person who'd do his own thing, or was the type of person. I suppose the thing that relegates him to the status, sort of diminishes his status, is the fact that he kowtowed ultimately to Tesco's management. But this is a guy. Only in one area did he really excel, and that was in football. Other areas, I suppose horse racing he gambled on, and so on and so forth. Was a bit of a pisshead, but he was a smart guy. But that's an indication of the levels of repression. The levels of repression that sort of points to the architects. This is the argument. This is the solid scientific argument, where basically 4 people, which I sort of saw coming, basically got everyone pissed as a fart on farts, and that's the way it'll always be. So yet again, we've had the attempts, like I said, at some notion of trying to build something up. Basically, it's a sack of shit. It's nothing, and it leads to nothing. It's like I said, space of final frontier. The gap between the ears of Tesco, not only Tesco, but in turn the architects. Space can't be a frontier, because there's nothing there in that sort of space. Which is why I mentioned as well all this propaganda, sort of around Britishness and stuff like that. The Austin Mini, the company that designed the Austin Metro, are you having a fucking laugh? That is more significant than many people may realise. you know, it points to you know, like I said, I've won all the arguments. Now, when we get, like, for example, two stooges in a Hollywood B movie stunt to try and, you know, daddy's doing this, daddy's doing that. I've already sort of covered that. But again, this is the nature of a repressed group of people who can get the world pissed on a series of farts. And that's essentially what you're always going to see. That's what I see. So basically, part of knocking Tesco's off its fucking perch, and in turn the architects and anyone they want to get pissed on fart cushions and stink bombs, that is their business. You know, if those techniques are used, I don't care who the fuck it is, you do your own thing. You know, in the face of something like that, you do your own thing. You know, if people are off their head, you just don't, you know, if they come to you, you know, they may produce on the screen the British government, the American government, the British royal family. Don't fucking bring them into an argument they can't fucking win. Yeah? Ultimately. Otherwise, I'll knock them off their fucking perch too. You telling me I can't? You're the only ones who can do science? But anyway, we've had Gay Bar. Again, another piece of mythology. Wayne couldn't take. Wayne tried to pull stunts with me, Wayne Good, and he couldn't take it. Sticks and stones. You know, my parents get called down to my intestines. Ultimately, that's my parents being called names. You know, that's about the sum total of it. You know, the architects are the type of people, like I said, you know, who do, like, you know, Lorenzo, a sort of Lorenzo Santabois process. You know, these ain't, you know, you build an argument around people like that. You know, where, you know, the space between the ears, there's nothing there, ultimately. You know, I looked up the 12 Monkeys tonight. We've had suggestions about Michael Jackson's Bubbles, I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles. It's like, What's Wong was sort of like a little monkey, wasn't he? And it turns out that people all over the place are blowing him off left, right and centre. Getting pissed on his, whatever you want to call it. Personally, I use the toilet. That's a symbol of civilization to me. Anyway, which is a damn sight more civilised than niggers. Going round like this, which sort of falls flat. I think it's true. The type of people who produce Hollywood B-movie, amateur dramatics, even reducing Follywood to the status of one big fuck off, like Hollywood B-movie that goes nowhere, where they're shit-faced on their own supply, off the back of Tesco's management, and ultimately off the back of the architects. But everything I see and do now will be off the basis of repression. You know, ultimately, it's not about my mum and dad, or what I do off the back of my mum and dad being called names. Who gives a shit? You know, I'm not Wayne Good, I'm not Kath Merrick, I'm not Stephen Merrick, I'm not Nicky Page. These are the type of people who you know, like Wayne Good. What's wrong? The seeds are already there for his tizzy fits around him trying to play some sort of mind games with me. I just dealt with him, and that was that for me. But Lorenzo Saint-Dubois over there couldn't quite handle that, could he? So the world has to get pissed on their farts. That's ultimately the sum total of it. So yet again, an attempt to start to, like I said, gateway drugs, is it? That's how you sort of knock off its fucking perch. But again, the concoctions, as we've had tonight, to try and suggest, if anyone's possessed, I don't believe such a thing exists. You know, there's such things as influences. I don't believe anyone's ever been possessed by anything. You know, the very question of it sounds ridiculous to me. The sciences of the mind, if that's what you want to call them these days, personally, the way things are, I'd question that. Sort of really needs to think about that sort of approach. It's a pretty bizarre approach to me. But anyway, so it boils back down to the architects and then their repression. Ultimately, Kath and Stephen Merrick, I suppose. Ultimately, Kath Merrick, her repression, the degree of repression that woman had, and the lack of anything of real meaning that went into them, sort of thing. Yeah, okay. The people and all that sort of thing, right? But that's not how you deal with an argument. That's not how you deal with what's going on. That's not how things work. So yet again, Tesco's management sits back and says, "Oh, this means this and this means that." Oh, look at all the stuff going on here. The attempts at gateway drugs. I've won all the arguments anyway. I'll just look at it and fuck it off. Because basically, I've knocked it off its perch. But again, even if, whenever these people, Tesco's management, comes out with its bizarre concoctions, I'll just deal with it. I'm not one of the architects. But anyway, like I said, the creation of this amalgam that went around saying stuff like "I'll take you all on" sort of thing. Well, that's not really that's not really what I do, but that's the situation I find myself in. So that's what I've got to deal with. Like I said, we've had the attempt at a bit of codology tonight, which I've sort of won the argument anyway on stuff like that. A bit of codology, gay bar, Washington 1863 and all that sort of thing. Basically, it's codology. See what happens, sort of thing. I couldn't see that coming a mile off. It ain't fucking difficult. Not least because people are in the states they're in. This veering from hope. Oh, that was it. This veering from hope to despair. That is really crazy. Look at the type of people who say things like possession. What is it? What is it that fellow apparently called King? Probably not. Said, oh, have you ever thought you were possessed or something? That's a pretty bizarre notion. That's a pretty bizarre question to ask. You're talking about what is it? The 21st century, and people still ask that sort of question. But anyway, whether they do or don't, it sort of fits with what the architects would have wanted. These are people who I've made the argument countless times. As the concoctions start to take place, we will then get attempts at gateway, to use a metaphor, gateway drugs. I've knocked off its fucking perch. Tesco's management has effectively lost the argument, but through so many arguments, but through like I said in another video, the architects gave Tesco's management not more substance but more power. That's what they gave them. There's no difference in the substance, and there never will be. These are people who then try to say, "Oh, we'll do this better." I've got countless examples of saying these people are fucking off their fucking heads. Not only off their heads, but they ain't the brightest people in the ballpark, sort of thing, to use another metaphor. Which obviously, that's there's nothing in that. Using metaphors like that. But yeah, Lorenzo Saint Dubois couldn't quite his little flower, which is an indication of what I've said of the. Like I said, the record I listened to, Temptation. It's about a realistic relationship, isn't it? It's not about this cotton candy type Hollywood B-movie bullshit type relationship about what are essentially, ultimately, retards, I'd argue. Sticks and stones. You can't. Like, these people couldn't take being called names. They tried to call me names, I called them names back, and they couldn't take it. So they get the world pissed on their farts. And then they tried to do all this thing around my parents, which is just the architects in this drafting people all over the place, like happened, and you see in this video, in my video, the constraints that they try to apply on people, that our way is the only way. You are gonna do this or else. You're gonna do what we want or else, or you're gonna give us some crazy notion about hope or despair. It's a sack of shit. That's not how science works. That's not how art should work. The combination of art and science, if you want, but ultimately it's about it's more science than art. You have to really think smart in situations like this. That's what I do. So ultimately, I'm not nigger Nick. Fuck off to Africa and eat bananas the rest of your fucking days. Technically accurate. Why shouldn't I? Look at what that guy was suggesting to me. I couldn't give a fuck what his intentions were. Which for a time were to see whether I needed to be in a nut house. Clearly, I don't need to be. If this many attempts are being made to try and put me in a nut house, and the high priests and priestesses, Tesco's management, call me whatever name you fucking like. Ultimately, you're calling me names. What do you think I'm going to do about that? But then again, we get the concoctions to see, well, if we give him these concoctions, what will he do? Well, actually, you're giving me concoctions, ultimately, I don't do that much. So basically, what's the point in giving me the concoctions? Because Tesco's management is shit-faced on farts and names that the architects tried to call me. That's a continual process. They've got so many people pissed out their fucking heads, and I'm not into piss heads. I'm not into piss heads. I'm not into drug addicts. When I did drugs, I could handle my drugs. I really could handle my drugs. That's evident from what goes on with all this stuff. But again, like I said, and now it's died down a bit. Fucking come out with it as much as you fucking like. I've knocked off its fucking perch anyway. As with the rest of the stuff. And if Tesco's management tries to give it a power that it hasn't really got, like I said, the space between the ears, there's nothing fucking there. So that is partly why it's so easy to knock off its fucking perch. I'm really not interested. So many people, I'm interested in, I'm on the dole. I'm in this flat. I've scaled the flat, and you see these attempts to, all manner of attempts. That's the type of nature of the architects. Not especially Kath Merrick's mentality, and we get, so maybe in a way Kath Merrick is nigger Nick. I couldn't give a shit personally, but basically some nigger in a Hollywood B movie stunt they're going like this. You should know by now that's nowhere near what I'm like. And that is, I've made that argument constantly. But again, because of what the architects gave these people, Tesco's management, which they sort of already had, the Tesco Athena, disco. My argument is the Disco Inferno approach is miles better. But like I've said before, Tesco's, off the back of the architects and their repression, which is always going to win ultimately Tesco's management over, they've set that many stunts up. Basically, that's the way it is. I'll just deal with it, fuck it off, knock it off its fucking perch, and just get on with my day. That's what you do. But you do it with a significant degree of nous. They didn't have it between 96 and 2000, Tesco's management. That's the way it is. And that's the way, they wanted to see what happened. They wanted to bring things to some sort of what they thought was bring things to the boil. And so I just knock it off its fucking perch. That's what you do. What else would you do? Like say, oh no, I love Kath, I love Stephen, I love Wayne, I love Nikki. I couldn't give a fuck about them. My mentioning of them is for the purposes of a scientific argument, a well thought through argument. All this bullshit about minis and off the back of it about Britishness and all that bollocks. Take it up with the fucking company that designed the mini metro, for fuck's sake. That's how cool fucking Michael Caine is, for example. When you really look at it. Personally, I couldn't give a shit about the fella. But, which is, accurate. But like I said, I'd say in advance, don't crack out kidology around governments or aristocracy or anything like that. Because I'm knocking off its fucking perch. Liz was one thing, the rest, no interest. But if you produce something on the basis of an argument, you cannot win. You will never win Tesco's management. Then I'm knocking off its fucking perch. You can't win the argument. It really is that simple. So what's going to carry on after I do this video, there's going to be the sort of, I think they called it gateway drugs. It's a good metaphor to use, that I've knocked off their fucking perch. Everything that you see, I've pretty much knocked off its fucking perch. And that's what you've got to do in a situation like this. So again, it's interesting when you link in the Powells with stuff like this. Wayne, ultimately Lorenzo Saint Dubois, how these people were then, these individuals were then got pissed in the draft process, in the recruitment process that takes place, constrained, got pissed as a far, and then tried to subject me ultimately to what the architects were trying to achieve. That is the argument. Whoever it is, once they go that way, that's it. It's like, see ya. It's like, I'd rather concentrate on more constructive, interesting things, and pursuits and so on. Like spending time in a fucking flat. I'm on the dole. But that's the way it's always going to be. So whenever I go on the internet, like I said, the thing is, I've easily knocked all this shit off its perch. And it's sort of an echo of when I was in one of the nut houses, and all the staff, shit-faced as they were, thought he's thinking this, he's thinking that. I wasn't thinking anything of the fucking sort. That's what's sort of going on here now. I've not, like I said, if Tesco's management can't fucking get it, I've knocked all their shit off its fucking perch, and if they try to come out with it again, I'll knock it off its fucking perch again. That's the way it is. That's what the architects and eventually Tesco's management tried to pull off. These repressed, constraining, limiting, anachronistic, backward, and it is backward, isn't it? When you think about it, what type of I don't know. It's grandiose to say what type of century do you want, sort of thing, but it's an argument. I can go with that, but in a really measured way. And so, well, if that's the type of century you want, of a century of incredible repression and constraint, and so on, you're welcome to it. I'll just, I'm on the dole. I'll just go on and do what I do. So as soon as I finish this video, as we know, despite saying I've knocked it all off its fucking perch, which is why I can do the things I can do, you will get the attempts at stuff like gateway drugs, and to use that metaphor, and so on and so forth. Because of its intent, and because of where it comes from, because of the type of characters it comes from, and because of the conclusion it will lead to. that conclusion is in the interest of the architects, ultimately. Yeah? If you don't know that, then you're more shit-faced, Tesco's management, than I thought you were in the first place. But anyway, that's the way it is. So yeah, I'm going to start sitting outside. It is quite funny now to see, despite the fact that there'll be attempts to the usual type of stuff. Like with these attempts to lead me into arguments I couldn't give a fucking shit about ultimately, but because they're in my face, I have to knock them off their fucking perch. I'll do it every fucking time. So luckily, if you're going to call me parents' names, you get that from the architect sort of thing. Ultimately, it's no big deal. Once you get to the meat and bones of the argument, it's basically people calling me mum and dad names and trying to suggest things to me. Go for it. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Also, for fuck's sake. Anyway, Tesco does what it does. But yeah, so like I said in my video, really effective piece of text. I would suggest to Tesco's management, you can take a lot from that, but you're too shit-faced to be able to. If Tesco's management are in the state of sitting there like rabbits in the fucking headlights, so veering between open despair, which they get from the architect, which they got ultimately from the architect, then that's their lookout. Me, get on with my day, knock it off its fucking perch, get on with my day. That's and find a better way of doing things. You just find a better way of doing things. The architects aren't about that. They're about imposing. Do you know what I mean? About imposing something that they want. Which is ultimately constraint. The perception that I need to be controlled. If anyone needs fucking controlling, it's the architects and the Tesco's management and the people they get shit-faced. But I couldn't give a shit if they want to go around getting pissed off their head and drugged up and all the rest of it. Ultimately, it's just yet more of a sort of, to use a metaphor, on-iders. that's all it effectively is. A load of on-iders, like I said, emanating from the likes of Lorenzo Saint-Devois, believing in things like possession and miracles, stuff like that. And you're telling me that's science? Maybe in the age of the architects, not on Leslie Jase time. Leslie Polymath Jase time. But it's right though, isn't it? Ultimately, I really am cool as a like grounded, level-headed, content to a significant degree, despite the attempts to make it seem to suggest to me that it's anything but. If you can't quite grasp that, then that's what's going through your heads, not what's going through my heads. My heads. He's the one with the poorly heads. Well, she, if you want to put it that way. But basically, right, boil it all down to its bare bones. It's a bunch of nutters going around saying things. You don't really take it seriously, do you? You fuck it off. Yeah, one of the, like I said in my last video, one of the methods you use is to knock that shit off its fucking perch. To use a supposed phrase used by someone who was okay for a while. That's what you do. So like I said, that's what you do. You knock it off its fucking perch. You just, to use the term descaling, and that's part of finding a better way of doing things. Ultimately, yet again, I mean, these attempts to suggest, oh, you're doing this or you're doing that, this means this means that. Actually, I can watch proper colour TV whenever I fucking like. Tesco's management is shit-faced on a mentality they were given by the architects, which is what my video clearly demonstrates, and the route to proper colour TV, which I think, if you want to frame it in that way, which seems a bit grandiose, considering I'm on the fucking dole. The 21st century, if you want the 21st century to be about repressed pissheads, drug addicts, and ultimately engaged in ultimately endeavour to put the likes of Lorenzo Saint-Dubois and his little flower on a pedestal, be my guest. If you bring it to me, I'll knock it off its fucking perch. Every time. Whoever it is, wherever they are, I'll knock it off its fucking perch. And just get on with the day. That's what being on the dole is all about. Not the architects or Tesco's management and so on and so forth. But like I said, the arguments fall flat every single time. It's just trying to, they've got shit-faced on all the myriad of suggestions they've tried making, on the myriad of concoctions they've tried coming out with. Yeah, it's a laugh. It is a sort of adventure, if you want to put it that way. It is pretty amusing when you think about it. And strip it down to its bare bones, and see it for what it is, which is a lot of people going around calling me names and trying to get me to be receptive to that sort of thing. Couldn't give a shit. It's like, ultimately, you're going to call me names. If you're that crazy to stand around on Tesco TV and round here trying to come over with that stuff, I'll knock it off its fucking perch, reduce it to the status of, well, look at that, people calling me and Anteston's names. Big fucking wow. What do you think I'm going to do? Go to my bed, start running around the flat fucking with cardboard boxes? I wouldn't put it past that lot. This is what you get when you get besotted with a bunch of people who, at the apex of which is this incredibly repressed character. You lot wanted to go with them. And that's sort of not, this is the scenario that I face. So like I said, that is why I have to do what I do, and it's not that difficult. But anyway, like I said, when Tesco's management, remember this, when Tesco's management try to build up with sort of a gateway drug to an argument that goes nowhere, that will never succeed. If you look over my content, anyone with any notes, and I have to question Tesco's on this. Anyone with any notes, serious notes, and serious substance, who's grounded, level-headed, with a degree of contentedness, who doesn't believe in fantasy notions like possession and miracles, hope and despair, and all that type of thing, but actually cuts through the crap, gets to the meat and bones of an argument, and says, well, ultimately, you've got a load of people pissed, coming in with stick bombs, fart cushions, on the basis of things like fanny farts, and weighing like the likes of Lorenzo Saint-Dubois, not being able to just lean forward and light the fart and just deal with it, sort of thing. So that's the way it is. That's the way it'll always be. Like I said, I've said, you're better off. Tesco's management, even though they're going to do this, crack out arguments around aristocracy, heads of state, and so on and so forth. And basically, if you're doing that with a scientific argument, it's completely valid to knock that type of shit off its perch, right? Because ultimately, it's just to serve the interests of the architects. You're doing that. And you may suggest, he'll do anything. That's actually you. That is what the architects do. That's what the architects kicked off. Me, I prefer a constructive approach. So there you go. The couple of things there. The company that brought you the great design of the Austin Mini Metro sort of picks apart things like that hippie crap in the 60s, things like Michael Caine's Big Deal crap film. It was actually a crap film well, it was. You say him. I can't even remember the fucking name. It's so crap. When they had a load of minis going around all over the place. Basically, see it for what it is. It was a shit film. It was based on a company that brought you the magnificent design of the Austin Mini Metro. Yeah, which is a great way of comparing and contrasted Lorenzo Centobois and his little flower. Anyway, the concoctions begin. That's the way it is. To try and get me sitting here, going off my head about being called names. This vehicle is going left. Stand back. It's just names, isn't it? It's just all this bullshit to try and establish, to try and get some propaganda value, to try and get some hope and despair bullshit. It's sort of an echo of the type of mentality that believes in possession and miracles. You're talking about the subtext that is so fucking anachronistic and backward. It's got so many people pissed as a fart running around trying to call me names, call my intestines names. And they're giving me concoctions to try and see what happens if I get called names on concoctions. That's me. That's people trying to call me names on concoctions. Is it? What do you think? Anyway, so yeah. So basically, it's this is a bunch of nutters who got carried away with the attention that they got, which incidentally I've pointed out in the past. Well, even the amalgam pointed that out, that you had scientists getting pissed on the levels of attention that were going on. When you're capable of doing clear thinking in pretty much any scenario, you don't fall for that type of thing. You see it for what it is. It's like I've mentioned decorative niggers. It's sort of that sort of thing. You just put it to one side and you say, right, this is the argument, and you don't get intoxicated by the levels of the Gary type technique of trying to and all this and all the looks that owe so much to pop music videos. From the lines of the Slip Factory, which is actually accurate. But again, it's just essentially it's loads and loads of people trying to call me names. I don't know how to deal with that sort of stuff. I've had enough practice. Not only that, but I had effective messages from my antecedents during my upbringing to be able to deal with that type of stuff anyway. Lorenzo Centobois obviously didn't. So what do you know? The whole world is in traction. Put itself there. That's effectively how it is, isn't it? And so the world in traction sort of tries to call me names and put me on concoctions. Like tonight, the lead up to trying to call me Nigger Nick. some fucking shit-faced baboon doing all this, and like if he's putting Hollywood B movies stuff like that, it is perfectly reasonable for me to say, fuck off to where you belong, fuck off to Africa and suck on fucking bananas for the rest of your life. Valid. It is actually, when you think about it. If I'm being called names, and but then that is part of the process of, like I said, of the Disco Inferno. You knock them off their perch, you bring the argument down to a level where you see it for what it is. You see the bare bones of the argument, and that's how that is what Alex Ferguson had. That's what I've got. That's what I've always had, and ultimately